Right before the wedding, I wanted to surprise my fiancé, but what I found in his office. I stood on the raised platform, fingers clutching the soft layers of ivory tulle, staring at my reflection like it was a secret only meant for me. The gown shimmered beneath the overhead lights, a soft ivory silk that clung in all the right places and floated around my legs like a cloud. My mother fussed behind me, smoothing the fabric, wiping at non-existent wrinkles, her eyes already glassy with tears. "It's perfect, Emily," she whispered. I swallowed hard, pressing my fingers into the beaded bodice. I felt like I might burst, not just with excitement for the wedding, but with the weight of everything I was holding inside. 5 years. That's how long I'd loved Ryan Hayes, a man who could make a spreadsheet sing, who kissed my forehead when he thought I was asleep, who believed in me even on days I didn't believe in myself. He was gentle, smart, the kind of person who carried old ladies' groceries up the stairs and remembered the name of my college hamster. The kind of man who sometimes looked at me like I was the only thing in a room full of stars, and in a few weeks, I'd be his wife. The past months had been a blur of cake tastings and seating charts and floral mock-ups. Every spare moment felt consumed by wedding decisions. But even amid the whirlwind, I had my own secret plan, a surprise bigger than any diamond ring. Ryan still didn't know the truth about me. To him, I was Emily Carter, marketing manager, perfectly ordinary, raised middle class in Seattle, scraping together savings for the wedding of our dreams. But that wasn't the full story. My family owned Carter Group, a sprawling conglomerate with stakes in shipping, finance, real estate. My mother was practically a celebrity in the business world, a woman who'd once made a CEO cry during a negotiation and then bought his company the next week. I'd spent most of my adult life carving out my own path, determined not to coast on my last name. That's why I'd kept my role as silent partner in SparkMind, a small tech startup Ryan and I were quietly building together, completely under wraps. Until now, because just yesterday my mother signed off on an investment contract worth $500 million. A wedding gift, she said, for the life Ryan and I were about to build. I planned to tell him everything on our wedding night, about Carter Group, about SparkMind's new future, about how his faith in me was about to pay off in ways he'd never dreamed. I wanted to watch his eyes go wide, to see that moment where all the puzzle pieces finally clicked into place. My mother dabbed her eyes as the tailor pinned another layer of tulle behind me. "You look so happy, darling," she murmured. "I've never seen you shine like this." "I am happy," I said, my voice catching just a little, because I was. Ryan and I had built so much together already. Nights working side by side on business plans, quiet dinners where we talked about our dreams, owning a house by the river, starting a family, traveling to Paris. My mother hugged me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. "Don't let the world make you suspicious. Happiness is precious. Hold on to it." I nodded, pressing my lips together. Somewhere inside me, a small flutter of anxiety unfurled like a paper fan. Maybe it was just wedding jitters, or maybe it was the weight of secrets, even the good ones. That afternoon, sunlight poured through the bridal boutique windows, turning the silk of my gown molten gold. The tailor finished fussing with the hem and declared me officially bridal ready. I stepped into the dressing room and slipped back into my jeans and sweater, carefully folding the dress into the garment bag. My mother was chatting with the boutique owner, her hands flying as she described the wedding venue and the guest list. That's when my phone buzzed. Ryan's name lit up the screen. His voice poured through the speaker with that familiar warmth that always made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. "Wow," he said, as though he could see me through the phone. "I bet you look incredible right now." My smile felt shy, secret. "Maybe I do, but you'll have to wait and see." He chuckled softly. "You're killing me?" He paused, then added, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I'll be home late. There's a critical meeting with an important client. Can we talk when I get back?" My heart dipped for just a second, but I kept my voice light. "Of course. Go do your thing." And just like that, the moment dissolved into the gentle rustle of tulle and the bright hum of the boutique, as if nothing in the world could ever go wrong. I turned back to the mirror, smoothing a stray lock of hair behind my ear, and whispered to my reflection, "He has no idea what's coming." For now, I was just Emily Carter, fiancé, bride-to-be, woman glowing with secrets and plans, and I had no idea my world was about to fracture. It started with something simple. A decision. I wanted to surprise Ryan. Why wait until the wedding? I thought. I wanted to see the look in his eyes when he realized how much I believed in him. And in us. I couldn't get the idea out of my head, so instead of waiting for him to come home late again, I grabbed the crisp folder and headed for his office. The city was lit up in gold as I pulled into the parking garage, adrenaline humming in my veins. I kept rehearsing how I'd say it. "I'm not just your fiancé, Ryan. I'm your partner. In every way." As I stepped out of the elevator, I realized how quiet the building was after office hours. The usual hum of chatter and ringing phones was gone, but one light still glowed down the corridor. Ryan's office. I knew Ryan sometimes stayed late, working on proposals for clients who seemed to exist solely in different time zones. I reached out to knock, but froze. A soft, breathless sound slipped through the door. A half laugh. A sigh that wasn't his. Then a low murmur, Ryan's voice, warm and coaxing in a way I'd never heard before. "Shh, it's okay. We have time. She doesn't suspect a thing." My chest squeezed tight. I held my breath, listening as another small gasp followed, mingled with the creak of leather, like someone shifting against his office chair. I hesitated in the hallway, my heels sinking into the thick carpet. Someone else was in there with him. I moved closer. Ryan's door was mostly closed, but a slim gap glowed warm yellow into the dim corridor. I could see the edge of his desk, the corner of a picture frame, and the tips of 2 shadows cast onto the floor. I should have knocked. I should have turned around. Instead, I leaned in, breath shallow, and peeked through the gap. And the world fell out from under me. Ryan was there. His back was to me, his dress shirt a soft blue that I'd bought for him last Christmas. His hands were braced on the desk, caging in a woman in a sleek black dress, her hair shining dark and glossy beneath the lamplight. Her fingers tugged at his collar, eyes half closed, mouth parted as she whispered something I couldn't hear. He leaned closer, his lips grazing her neck. "I know, baby. I know," he murmured, his voice low, soothing. "Once the wedding's over, I'll handle everything." I went absolutely still. Ryan continued, his voice dropping even lower. "So she'll transfer all her shares in the company to me. She trusts me completely. She'll sign anything I put in front of her." The woman let out a soft, throaty laugh. Ryan chuckled too, shaking his head. "She's so sweet," he said. "So easy to manage." My entire body turned to ice, a nauseating swirl of shock and disbelief. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe this was some twisted joke. Maybe I'd walked into a conversation taken completely out of context. But Ryan's tone wasn't joking. It was patient, confident, calculating. And the way the woman was looking up at him, like he was hers, told me everything I needed to know. I stood frozen in the hallway, my pulse hammering in my ears. The warmth that had been blooming in my chest all week turned to ice. I thought about the contract, about my mother's proud tears, about the dress still hanging in the back seat of the car. And then I heard his voice again, softer, darker. "She'll sign whatever I give her. She always does." Then I heard a sharp gasp, the woman's, and the faint rustle of fabric as if clothes were shifting, falling. I stumbled backward from the door, one hand clamped over my mouth to hold in the sound that threatened to break out of me. A sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. And just before I tore myself away, I heard a low, guttural moan. Ryan's voice whispering, "God, you're incredible." That was enough. I didn't hear the rest. I didn't want to. The corridor tilted beneath my feet. My vision tunneled as I staggered down the hall, gripping the contract folder so tightly the edges dug into my palms. Silent tears slipped down my cheeks as I stumbled toward the elevator. I hit the elevator button 3 times before I realized my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't press it properly. When the doors finally slid open, I stepped inside and sagged against the mirrored wall, pressing my forehead to the cold glass. I couldn't breathe. Ryan's voice kept echoing in my head, as cruel and casual as if he'd been talking about the weather. She'll sign whatever I give her. How long had it been going on? Weeks? Months? Was I the only one who hadn't seen it? The contract felt suddenly heavy, poisonous. How was I supposed to hand it to him now? How could I say, "Let's build our life together," to a man who was already planning to steal it all from me? Somewhere behind me, Ryan's laughter drifted out into the empty hallway, and for the first time, I wondered if the man I loved had ever truly existed at all. By the time I got home, my face was scrubbed clean, my hair smoothed back, a smile rehearsed in the reflection of the front door glass. Don't fall apart here. Not yet. Inside, the living room glowed softly with lamplight. My parents were there, perched on the couch, thumbing through wedding magazines and clinking teacups on saucers. My father looked up from magazines as I slipped through the door. "There's our bride-to-be," he said, grinning. "Emily, sweetheart," my mother said, lifting her head. "Where did you disappear to? We were just picking out centerpiece flowers. What do you think about ivory roses with eucalyptus?" My father leaned forward, eyes warm, voice gentle. "Or lilies. Didn't you always love lilies?" I stood there in the doorway, still clutching my purse like a lifeline, wanting to scream that nothing mattered. Not flowers, not invitations, not dresses, because the man I loved was plotting to rob me blind. But I didn't scream. I swallowed hard, forced a smile, and said, "Lilies sound beautiful." "Well, come sit. Tell us about the fitting," my father urged, as though nothing in the universe could possibly be wrong. So I sat on the couch and tried to keep my hands from trembling. I told them about the dress, about how it sparkled, how it made me feel like a princess. I forced a smile until my cheeks hurt, nodding at their questions about guest lists, flower arrangements, color palettes. All the while, my mind spun like a broken merry-go-round. How could he? How could Ryan look me in the eyes every day and talk about our future, about children and houses and vacations in France, while secretly plotting to steal from me? Was any of it real? Had he ever loved me at all? Or was every gentle kiss, every late-night work session, every whispered "I love you" just part of the plan? I kept picturing the way he'd held her, the way his voice had turned low and tender as he said my name, like it was a problem he'd soon be free of. And I couldn't stop hearing that word over and over. Predictable. Was that how he saw me? A silly little girl who'd sign whatever contract he handed me, oblivious to the knife he was pressing into my back. A few hours ago, I'd been thinking about wedding menus. Now I was wondering whether my entire relationship was a lie. At one point, my mother touched my hand, frowning. "You look tired, Emily. Are you sure you're okay?" I managed a soft laugh. "Just wedding stress," she smiled, satisfied with the easy answer, and went back to flipping magazine pages. That night, back to my apartment, I sat curled on the couch, hugging a pillow to my chest. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Around 10:30, I heard the lock click. My heart leapt into my throat. Ryan walked in, hair slightly mussed from the breeze outside, carrying a bouquet of white lilies, the stems wrapped in silver ribbon. He smiled as warm and easy as ever. "Hey, beautiful," he said, crossing the room to kiss my cheek as though nothing in our world had changed. "Surprise!" I felt my breath hitch. For a moment, my body leaned toward him out of pure habit, pure memory. But inside me, something had frozen solid. "You okay?" he asked, brow furrowing slightly. "You look tired." I forced myself to nod, swallowing hard against the scream clawing at my throat. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just wedding stuff." He smiled again, relieved. "I promise, babe, it's all gonna be worth it. Everything we've worked for. You'll see." He set the lilies on the kitchen counter and started telling me some story about a client mix-up at the office, laughing like he didn't carry a knife behind his smile. I stood there, half listening, half drowning, watching the droplets slide off the lily's white petals and fall onto the countertop like silent tears. And all I could think was, this man might have never loved me at all. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as Ryan breathed evenly beside me. By dawn, I wiped down kitchen counters that didn't need wiping, rearranged tea tins into perfect rows, scrubbed a coffee mug so hard the glaze felt rough under my fingers. Meanwhile, Ryan was off on his morning run, dressed in his sleek joggers, earbuds in, acting like nothing in our world was cracking open. The second the apartment door clicked shut behind him, I grabbed my laptop. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely type in my password. I started searching. It only took a few clicks. His company website, some public social pages, a tagged photo here, a travel hashtag there. And then I found them. Turquoise water, palm trees swaying under a blood-orange sunset, crystal goblets of champagne clinking over white linen dinners, and there, in the background of one photo, laughing and looking tan and relaxed, was Ryan. With her, the same woman from his office. Her hair was wet, her arms draped around his neck as they floated in a private infinity pool overlooking the sea. The caption read, "Corporate conference vibes with my favorite people." I stared at it until the image blurred. Ryan had told me he'd been in Bali for client meetings. He'd called every night, claiming exhaustion, telling me how much he missed me. All lies. I slammed the laptop shut, pressing my fists to my eyes until stars danced behind my eyelids. When I finally breathed again, I picked up my phone. I didn't want to call Rachel. I didn't want her gentle voice, or her fury on my behalf. I didn't want anyone to know how deeply I'd been betrayed, but I couldn't carry it alone. Not all of it. So I typed, "Can we talk today? It's urgent." Rachel answered in seconds. Of course, same cafe. 11 a.m., at exactly 11 a.m. The next morning, I sat in the far corner of the little cafe where Rachel and I used to plan my wedding color palette and laugh about bachelorette parties. Rachel arrived in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair twisted into a bun, eyes sharp with worry. "Emily, what's going on?" The words spilled out like a dam had burst. The whispers outside Ryan's office, the photos, the red dress, the lies about conferences. How he planned to make me sign over my shares. How I'd been sleepwalking through a fairy tale that was only ever a scheme. Rachel didn't interrupt. She just listened, each detail sharpening the fury in her eyes, until she finally leaned forward and whispered, "That son of a bitch." The words burst out of her like a slap. I let out a trembling laugh that tasted like salt. "I keep thinking there's some explanation," I whispered. "That maybe I misunderstood." No." Rachel shook her head, voice shaking. "You didn't misunderstand. He's scamming you, and he's screwing her. At the same time." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she demanded. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Maybe I didn't want to see it. Maybe I wanted my perfect life more than I wanted the truth. Listen to me. You are not marrying that man. You don't marry someone plotting to rob you blind." I blinked at her. "But everything's planned. The venue, the dress, the guests. None of it matters if you're marrying a liar," she snapped. Then softer, "Please, Emily, don't do it." I sat there for a long time after she left, the cafe filling and emptying around me, baristas steaming milk, chairs scraping on tile floors. I knew she was right. Finally, I pulled out my phone again and texted Ryan. "We need to talk." He suggested our favorite cafe downtown, a place with caramel lattes and velvet chairs where we'd spent countless afternoons planning our future. When I arrived, the place was half empty, golden afternoon light slanting through the windows, catching in motes of dust. I chose a table near the back, far from the baristas who knew us by name. Ryan walked in 5 minutes later, wearing a crisp white shirt, hair perfectly in place, his smile as bright as ever. "Hey, beautiful," he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. "You look tired. Everything okay?" I didn't kiss him back. Ryan slid into the chair across from me, setting his phone face down on the table. What's going on?" he asked. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat felt raw. Then I pulled my phone from my purse and turned it toward him. "I want you to look at these." He glanced at the screen and frowned. "What is this?" "Bali," I said, my voice trembling. "Or should I say, your corporate conference." He blinked, then looked back at the photo. A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Emily, it's not what you think." "Don't," I snapped. "I stood outside your office door, Ryan. I heard you talking about how you'd get me to sign my shares over. About how I'm predictable." His face paled, then darkened. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, fine. I didn't want you to find out like this." My chest tightened so painfully I thought my ribs might crack. "So it's true?" I whispered. "All of it?" Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "Emily, listen to me. It's just business." I stared at him. "Business? You're sleeping with her, and plotting to steal from me." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Emily, listen to me. Sparkmine's on the verge of something huge, but it needs a single vision. I've been talking to Wickham Tech. They're ready to invest big, but only if I'm running things. You and we can still get married, keep Sparkmine in the family, and cash out when the time's right." I saw it then, the calculated pause, the rehearsed sincerity. He wasn't pleading. He was performing. I stared at him, my voice shaking. "Wickham Tech? You're planning to hand our company to a rival?" Ryan smirked, leaning forward. "Not hand it over, Emily. Partner. But I need your shares to seal the deal. You'll sign, won't you? You always do." My eyes filled with tears, hot and blinding. "You always do," I mumbled, his words cutting deeper than any knife. He reached across the table, grabbing my hand. "It doesn't have to change anything. We get married. We keep building Sparkmind. No woman can replace you. The other women, they are just for fun." I pulled my hand back like he'd burned me. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I stared at the man I thought I loved, the man who'd held me while I cried over work stress, who'd planned our honeymoon, who knew how I took my coffee. And all I could see was a stranger. Finally, I stood. My chair scraped loudly against the wooden floor. Ryan's eyes widened. "Emily, wait. Don't go. We can fix this." My voice was shaking, but steady enough to cut through his words. "No, Ryan. I don't think we can." His mouth opened as though to argue, but nothing came out. I blinked away the tears threatening to spill over and picked up my purse. For you, this was a business plan. For me, it was love. I turned and walked out, leaving Ryan sitting there, staring into his cold coffee. 3 days after the cafe, I called off the wedding. No dramatic showdown, no screaming, no thrown rings glittering across the room. Just a quiet conversation with my parents in the living room, my voice trembling as I told them the truth. My mother's eyes glistened, but she didn't let a single tear fall. Instead, she sat very still, her shoulders squared, as though holding back an earthquake beneath her ribs. My father clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth might crack, but they both listened. And they believed me. My mother and I had a long talk. For the first time, I let her see every vulnerable piece of me. And she didn't judge me. She simply said, "Now let's fix it." Later that night, I sat alone at my desk, the soft glow of my laptop casting pale light across the darkened room. I opened my email to the wedding planner. My fingers hovered over the keys for a long time before I finally typed the words, "I regret to inform you that the wedding is canceled." I stared at the sentence, feeling the weight of it press into my chest, like a stone sinking in water. The words looked cold and sterile on the screen, so heartbreakingly simple for something that had once felt like the axis my entire life spun around. My thumb hesitated over the trackpad, but then I clicked send. For a few seconds I sat completely still. A strange emptiness opened up inside me, a silence so deep it felt like standing in the center of an abandoned cathedral. And yet, beneath that emptiness, something else unfurled. The tiniest breath of relief, like air finally filling my lungs after being held underwater. Because somehow hitting send felt like breathing again. Word spread faster than wildfire. Friends texted me cautiously, afraid to say too much. Distant relatives called, pretending concern while sniffing around for gossip. People asked the same questions over and over. What happened? Was there someone else? Did you change your mind? I didn't explain. I didn't owe anyone my story. A week later, I moved into a small apartment downtown, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a narrow balcony that overlooked the river. That first night, I stepped outside, wrapping my sweater tighter around me. The city sprawled below a constellation of glowing lights, the bridges lit up in ribbons of gold and white, cars flowing across them like tiny currents of light. The wind smelled faintly of rain and distant traffic. Somewhere, a siren wailed, fading into the hush of midnight. I stood there for a long time, a mug of tea cradled in my hands, feeling both very small and strangely strong. Inside me, the ache was still there. The tears still came, unexpected and sharp. A song on the radio, the sight of lilies at the market, an old email thread between me and Ryan titled Wedding Playlist Ideas. But slowly, quietly, a strange calm began to seep into my bones, because every sunrise felt like proof that I was still here, and that I hadn't been destroyed. I didn't sell my shares in SparkMind right away. Instead, I sat down with my mother and a team of Carter Group lawyers, determined to understand everything, every contract, every clause, every single detail Ryan thought I'd naively sign without reading. He was right about one thing. SparkMind had potential. But he was wrong to think I couldn't make it happen on my own. Ryan thought his shares made him untouchable, but I had Carter Group's resources, and my mother's ruthless business acumen on my side. I devised a plan. I would buy him out, but on my terms. In the end, he had no choice but to accept, his signature shaky on the dotted line. And by the time he realized what he'd lost, SparkMind was mine alone. 2 months later, I stepped into Carter Group's headquarters not as a visitor, but as a force. In my mother's glass-walled office, I wore a navy suit, hair pinned up, a folder of market reports tucked under my arm. "I'm ready," I said, my voice clear. My mother nodded once. She didn't say I told you so. She just handed me a stack of projects, and from that day forward, I became Executive Vice President of New Ventures. Day by day, my voice grew steadier, my ideas sharper. I signed contracts, negotiated partnerships, gave presentations to rooms full of men who'd once ignored me at business dinners. And SparkMind? I poured my soul into it. I assembled a team of engineers and developers who believed in my vision, a tech platform using AI to empower small businesses. Not Ryan's idea. Mine? I worked day and night, dissecting code, refining business plans. I leveraged Carter Group's resources to turn SparkMind into something bigger than Ryan ever dreamed. 6 months later, I stood on the stage of a global tech conference in Singapore. The ballroom shimmered under an ocean of bright lights, each spotlight cutting through the dark like blades of white gold. Rows of velvet chairs stretched back into a blur of shadows. Camera flashes strobed like tiny thunderstorms across the crowd. Somewhere near the front, journalists bent over their notebooks, pens scratching, murmuring to each other in hushed tones. The scent of expensive perfume mingled with the faint chemical tang of stage electronics. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it echo in my ribs, but my voice didn't tremble as I spoke. I wore a navy suit, hair pinned up, the soft glow of the LED screens reflecting off the silver buttons on my sleeves. I presented SparkMind as a groundbreaking platform that had secured millions in investment. The audience erupted in applause, the sound crashing over me like a wave. Reporters scribbled furiously. A low hum of whispers rose through the room. And then I saw him. At the very back of the hall, half shadowed beneath the rim of a downlight, stood Ryan. He wore a suit, too, dark, impeccable, but it hung looser on his shoulders than I remembered. His eyes were locked on me, wide and stunned, as though trying to reconcile the woman on the stage with the naive girl he'd once called predictable. A flicker of something crossed his face, regret maybe, or panic, but then his gaze dropped to the floor. He looked so small back there, swallowed by a sea of other faces, as if the world had moved on without him. And maybe it had. I smiled from the stage, my gaze brushing past him as though he were a stranger. And as I concluded my speech, I said, "Sparkmind isn't just a company. It's proof that you can rise from ashes and build something extraordinary." The crowd roared, but my eyes lingered on a figure in the front row, a man in a sharp blazer, his posture relaxed, yet his gaze keen and assessing. He was Alejandro Marquez, a venture capitalist who'd approached me earlier, murmuring about a global partnership that could take Sparkmind to new heights. After the speech, he found me backstage. "You're not what I expected, Emily Carter," he said, his voice smooth, his smile both sharp and warm. "I've been watching you for years. You were always more than a name." His words caught me off guard, a spark of possibility flickering in a heart I'd thought was closed. That night, back at my hotel, the hush of the conference still rang in my ears. My suite smelled faintly of starched linen and polished wood. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glowed, a sprawl of neon signs and glass towers reflected in the dark surface of Marina Bay. The Singapore Flyer spun slowly against the sky, lit in shifting colors of turquoise and violet. I stood barefoot on the cool marble floor, peeling off my suit jacket, feeling the weight of the day slide from my shoulders. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with a message. "Emily, please, can we talk? Just one more time." It was Ryan. I stared at the words as the city lights blinked beyond the glass. I remembered his laughter in Bali, his voice calling me predictable. I thought of the sleepless nights, trying to fix something I didn't break. And then I typed, "I deserve a future without lies." And I've built one. I hit send, then blocked his number. I stepped out onto the balcony. A warm breeze curled around me, carrying the faint scent of sea salt and city life. The lights of the skyline glittered on the black water below like scattered jewels. Somewhere far off, a ship's horn blew, low and mournful, echoing over the bay. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered into the humid night air, "I'm still whole, and I'm strong enough to start again." As I turned to go inside, my phone buzzed again. Not Ryan, but Alejandro. "Dinner tomorrow? Let's talk about the future." I smiled into the dark, the weight of the past lifting. Just a little. The river below sparkled, and I felt it, the pulse of a new beginning.